I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Hey, welcome back, and what a delight to have back with us today Pastor Carl Gallups. He writes books, he outruns locomotives, he leaps tall buildings, he drinks a lot of coffee, puts a lot of sugar on his cereal in the morning.
I think you about nailed it, Perry.
How you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me back on. It's always a joy to be with you guys at Dove.
You have looked into this study. In fact, I tried to get the doctor on the air, but John Hopkins University has done some terrific studies lately on transgenders and homosexuals, which has kind of put the world on tilt because some of those articles actually ran in the Wall Street Journal. Tell us about them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I have been in the media commenting on them as well, and in fact have taken some proactive stance on this Obama insane criminal transgender bathroom order. But yeah, so I'm very familiar with it. Perry, the deal is what a lot of people don't know. Of course, you're speaking of Dr. Paul McGue, and he used to be, for 25 years, he was the head of psychiatry at John Hopkins University and the hospital, and also Dr. Mayer, who is the professor of biostatistics at Arizona State University. He's a scholar in residence at the medical school at John Hopkins. These two guys teamed up recently, putting together a 143-page report. As they describe it, it's simply science, facts, and medical truth. They don't go into any political agenda. They don't take a stance on, for example, the Obama transgender bathroom order. It's not even mentioned in there. It's just they have been studying the science of this for decades. Not those two men necessarily, although Dr. Paul McGue has, but these two men have recently teamed up to release this report. And it's amazing because a lot of people don't know. I'm sure your audience knows because they're above average intelligence, but a lot of people don't know that John Hopkins University and the hospital, they pioneered transgender surgery. I think it was in the 1960s or 70s. I could be mistaken. I don't have the figures the facts right in front of me, but it was decades ago that they were actually pioneering this, because the truth of the matter is, as you know, Perry, less than 0.5%, and some statistics have it at less than 0.25% of all births in the United States, for example, result in what they consider to be a genetic defect, a hermaphrodite, and then there is a more modern term for it, mixed sex, I think it's called, where a child is born with some ambiguous sexual characteristics. Perhaps they have male characteristics on the outside, but female characteristics on the inside, like ovaries, etc., or vice versa. And it can be very sad and very upsetting to a family and then to a child growing up. So decades ago, even though it was a teeny percentage, John Hopkins University pioneered the research in trying to bring some alleviation of these situations of desperation in families and children. And of course, children grow up. What do you do when you're growing up with this genetic defect? Well, they pioneered sexual reconstructive surgery. They pioneered some of the hormone therapy, replacement therapy, and various drugs that would assist in helping a person hone in on a sexual identity for a child in that case. Now, listen, I get that, and I'm a pastor, Perry. I've been a pastor for 35 years, you know that, and prior to that, spent 10 years in law enforcement and investigation. So, I'm a people person. I've served and protected and defended, and now ministering to people. I don't hate people. I'm not a hater, and so what I try to tell people is, look, I get it about people who are truly dealing with mixed sex genetic defects. And we need to be gracious and kind and loving and accommodating to those people within the boundaries of sanity for the rest of us. I get that. All of this could be solved so commonsensically. But what we're dealing with is really an agenda, Perry. As you know, the radical homosexual agenda has adopted this whole transgender thing and has shoved it upon us. So Dr. Paul McGue and Dr. Mayer have recently released this report that said two profound things. Number one, there is no sound, solid body of scientific evidence proving that a homosexual is born that way, much less a transgendered person. In other words, you don't grow up with your genetic makeup declaring you are a male. All of your body parts are correct and you are a male. All the trillions of cells in your body containing chromosomal and DNA information scream you are a male. Your birth certificate says you are a male, but then somewhere in their life, teenage years or older, they may say, you know, but I feel more like a female. I identify more as a female. Well, what they have uncovered in decades of research on this is that there's no scientific evidence to prove that this feeling that you're a woman trapped in a man's body, for example, that has nothing to do with genetics. You're not born that way. And then they went on to disclose something very disturbing after decades and decades of studying and researching. And by the way, John Hopkins University doesn't even do transgender surgeries anymore because of what I'm getting ready to tell you. Dr. Paul McGue, as you said, published an article. He was quoted in the Wall Street Journal. This has been 3 or 4 years ago. Since then, he has been published and republished, stating and restating the same things over and over again, based upon decades of research from the leading pioneers in this entire industry, in this entire science. He said that they discovered a 5 times greater, or 40% higher rates of attempted suicides among transgendered people than the normal than the rest of the population, the 99.9% of the population, a 5 times greater attempted suicide rate. Now watch this, and a 20 times greater success rate in suicides. On top of that, they published that they discovered among the transgendered community, a little bit more for males than females, but the statistics were very close for both sexes, for both genders, that they had a significantly higher rate of other emotional, mental, psychological disorders, extreme distress, extreme depression, partner violence among family and partner, and other mental and emotional distresses. So this has been devastating to the whole radical homosexual movement, if you will, to the radical transgender movement. And you notice I use the words radical, because, again, there is a legitimate transgender or mixed sex genetic condition, but the radical agenda is something totally different. It's more of a now, coming from a biblical point of view, as I do, it's more of a perversion, if you will, of our true sexuality and our true gender identity, and it can be brought on by many things. You know.
All right, Carl. Let me get into a couple things here because I'm going to run out of time. 2 things come out of this. I want to ask you quickly because I only got a few minutes left. One is. So what is the cause of this transgender confusion or homosexual identity? Because I think the article goes on to say that it's psychological, and I'll have you respond on that. And number 2, those suicide statistics continue to come out. The question that I haven't been able to get answered is, was that prior to a transition or after a transition?
No, according to the research that I've done and the reports that I've read, the suicide rates, the increase in suicide rates are after the transition. And if I'm remembering correctly, Dr. Paul McGue stated this explicitly in the Wall Street Journal in the first interview he did, in the first article that he produced on this topic, and that's been several years ago. So it was after the transgender surgery. There was transgender regret, if you will, and then all kinds of other emotional problems, distress and depression and partner violence and all that, which led to suicide attempts. 40% greater an increase in suicide attempts, and then a 20 times higher rate of suicide success. So those statistics are hard science statistics.
What is the cause of this incredible changing of identity, of gender changing of identity?
I think it's extremely complex. I don't think we can tag it with any one thing. Listen, coming from a biblical point of view, I think it truly is spiritual, emotional. It truly is mental. And when I use that, I don't mean that in the most pejorative sense. I mean it as simply as this. If your body says you're a man, your DNA says you're a man, your birth certificate says you're a man, the trillions of cells in your body say you're a man, your parents say you were a boy when you were born, you grow up as a man, but somewhere in there you say, but I feel more like a woman, I identify more as a woman, then the question is, so is it a physical problem or a mental, emotional problem? Well, the answer to that is very obvious. It obviously is not a physical problem, so it is an emotional, mental problem. Now, that can be brought on by the way you're raised, the culture in which you're immersed, the influences you've had in your life. It could be brought on in some spiritual sense, some door that you've opened that's brought this into your life. It could be brought on by extreme pornography addiction. There are statistics and studies that actually prove that and point to that. So it's very complex. But it is definitely not, with all the body of science we have thus far, Perry, and here's the point of Dr. Paul McGue and Dr. Mayer, it's definitely not genetic. And that is the thing that they want to hold on to.
One last thing before I run out of time. Your online letter of notice of compliance letter.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Yes, you can find it at carlgallups.com, and the easiest way to download it right now is carlgallups.com/compliance.doc. That's Microsoft Word document, compliance.doc. Okay, it is a letter you can take and put on file in your school, in your children's public school system that says, under Title IX law, I am insisting that my non-transgender child be protected physically, mentally, and emotionally. You're required to under Title IX, and that they be provided single-user showers, locker rooms, and bathrooms to protect them in this sense. And Title IX, the wording of Title IX allows that, and I'm encouraging parents to demand this, to throw a monkey wrench in this whole gender bathroom sharing, criminally insane agenda that's going on. And it's working all over the nation.
Well, Carl, you're a delight. Let me just say to our viewers, go to Carl Gallups, GALLUPS.com, and ask for, or just get the notice of compliance letter, something you as a parent would find it to be a very responsible resource. Again, just go to carlgallups.com. Thanks, buddy. Keep up the good work. Let's connect again soon, okay? I know there's plenty to talk about with you.
There is, Barry, always. God bless you. Thanks for having me.
You too. All right, we'll be right back.